what you can expect from this week in science. I want to also make sure that all of you have watched the check-in that I sent to your school email. If you've not, this is a great time for you to watch it after our live session ends today, as Ms. Neville is going to be talking about, or in that check-in, I talk about what you can expect from class this week. So I want to share my screen with you so that you can briefly see what we're going to be doing this week. Okay, and I encourage you to watch the live session so that you can find out more about how live sessions will happen this week, the assignments that will be due this week, and how you can be counted virtually present on Thursday specifically. Okay, as always, please feel free to email me if you have any questions. I hope everyone had an amazing weekend. We're going to go ahead and get started learning about how the plant feeds itself. We want to remember that the plant is an autotroph, We, as humans, animals, are heterotrophs. That means we must go outside of ourselves to find food. Plants, however, are autotrophs. That means they're able to make their own food. So today we're going to start discussing not only how they make their own food, but how they reproduce. Would you be shocked if I told you that plants can sexually reproduce? Yeah, not quite in the way that animals reproduce, but we're going to look at the sexual reproduction of flowering plants through the process of pollination. Okay, our learning objective for today is the student will be able to, that's you, the student will be able to use a model to explain how pollination occurs. Now remember, Ms. Neville released the notes to you last week. So the notes in the new orange folder in our Schoology class have the notes already here. And so you'll find that Ms. Neville doesn't spend long on each of the slides because you should already have these notes copied. So we're going to start talking about how the flower is the site or place where sexual reproduction happens. And sexual reproduction in a flower happens through pollination. Let's start learning the parts or structures of the flower. In our notes, we should have already drawn this picture. Feel free to color it when you want to. You had a lot of free time last week, especially if you finished your test early for science and you finished your RI and MI. You may have had some free time. So I wanted to look for a second with you at the parts of the flower. There are certain parts here on the flower There are certain parts here on the flower that we must learn about, okay? The flower has both male and female sex cells that can help to create offspring. If we'll remember, sexual reproduction happens with a male and a female, and they create an offspring. So, sorry. So when we look at the parts of the flower here, Ms. Neville's going to label it with you today, or you should already have it labeled, but you can watch Ms. Neville label it as I also talk to you about the job of each of these parts. So the male parts of the plant are called the stamen. I know stamen means the male part of the plant because it has the word men in it. And there are two parts that make up the male stamen. The filament, that's the stalk that holds up the anther. The anther is this furry little bulb here that's covered in pollen. That's where our pollen comes from, is from that anther. And the pollen has the sperm cell, which is the male sex cell. It has the sperm cell that The male sex cell contributes to create offspring or children. The other part of the flower, which makes the flower so special, is that the flower also has the female part of the plant. So yes, a flower has male and female parts inside of it, so the flower can do something called self-pollinate. The female parts, there we go. The female parts of the flower are called the pistil. And there are 4 parts, really 5 parts of the pistil. Okay. The first part is this sticky bulb here called the stigma. The stigma is where pollen from the anther gets caught, and that sperm from the pollen will travel down this tube called the style. The style is a long tube that connects the stigma to the ovary. The ovary is what holds our baby seeds or eggs or ovules. And ovules are just another word for, there we go. Ovules are just another word for the eggs, okay? A lot of times you guys are going to get that confused. If you'll put your hands up with me, the ovary holds the eggs. The ovary holds the eggs. We want to be sure not to get those two things confused. The ovary holds the eggs, okay? Another important part that we want to make sure we have here is the petal. We want to make sure we have that petal labeled. The petal is important because it has this beautiful smell and color that attracts animals to the pistil. I want to take, or to the flower. I want to take some time to share a video with you. If you are drawing this right now, this is your little bit of time to get it done. Remember, these notes have already been released in our orange folder. So if Ms. Neville's going too fast for you, you'll want to get those notes from there. And I want to share a video with you. One second. And I'm going to share the link to the video in the chat. And then we're going to talk about what you saw. So this will be a great time for you and I to be able to have a discussion about pollination, okay? It's a cute little stop motion video, okay? If you would please check the chat for a link Ms. Neville sending to you now. And I want you to take some time to watch this video. It's about, let's check. It's about 2 minutes, 40 seconds long. Ms. Neville's going to stay quiet until 8:26, and then we're going to talk about what you saw in that video. Please watch that video. Click that link in the chat now. Okay, so hopefully we were able to see in that video. If someone could raise their virtual hands and tell me, what did you see in that video? What was happening? How would you describe pollination? Journey, go ahead and unmute yourself and tell the class.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
What I seen in the video was the plants couldn't walk, so the bee came along to help them problem solve to get the pollen, and he was able to give him the pollen.
Yeah. And so the bee was able to get something from the plants too, though. Can someone raise their hand and tell me, what was the bee able to get from the flowers? Kennedy?
One, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so one thing the bee was able to get from the plants was pollen.
Well, they didn't need the pollen, though. What was that juicy stuff that they talked about? What did it need? Gavin?
Nectar.
Nectar. So the bee was able to get nectar, and by that, when it went to go get that pollen, we'll find that it got brushed by the anther of the flower, and it transferred that pollen that was trapped on its fur. It transferred that pollen to other plants. Okay, so let's look in our notes here. And there's one thing I want us to add to our notes today, and you'll start to see this in the second in notes 2 in our science notebook. And I want to talk to you about, please write this in your note, pollination, how it happens. These are called general steps, okay? So there's actually 6 steps that you're going to start learning about today in your independent practice. But I want to give you some time, and I want to introduce to you these general steps. Please write down in your notes pollination, how it happens, and general steps. It's important for us to know that there are 4 general steps to pollination or sexual reproduction of the plant, okay? Step 1 is attraction. When I'm talking about attraction, I'm talking about those pretty petals and those pretty smells. What makes that flower so attractive to the bee is its pretty smells and pretty flowers. The bee starts to think, if that flower is so pretty, it must have really great sweet nectar. So here we're going to write attraction as our first step. And the bee is attracted to the pretty flowers, pretty colors and smells of the petals. Step 2, after attraction happens, pollination occurs. And pollination is actually what you just watched in that stop motion video. Pollination occurs, and this is when pollen is transferred from one flower to another. Oops, I messed up here. Pollen is transferred from one flower to another. Step 3 is fertilization. Fertilization. Fertilization is basically when, and this happens in humans and animals as well, fertilization is when the sperm from the anther, from that pollen, meets the eggs that are inside of the ovary, okay? So fertilization basically is when our sperm or pollen meets the egg or the ovule, and this is going to create an offspring. And we want to remember that offspring is that child. Okay? And our last step here, and this is an important word you don't want to forget, is germination. Germination begins with a G. That's important because that's an easy way to help us remember that germination means plant. Growth. Germination means growth, and that starts with a G as well. Okay, that's when that seed, we're going to learn about it tomorrow more. The seed really starts to feel inside of a fruit. The job of a fruit is to protect that seed. And so seeds are happen inside of a fruit that grows from the flower. And as that fruit rots away on the ground, it gives the seed a really nice, fertile, good, warm place to start to grow or germinate. Please take some time to finish writing this down. Miss Neville's going on at 8:35. This lesson is being recorded too, guys. Okay, so let's talk about what your assignments will be today that Ms. Neville's going to release to you. And for that, I got to share my screen again with you.